All right, well, thank you for coming to watch Jeremiah chapter 12. This chapter is kind of a continuation of the conversation what God and Jeremiah were having at the end of chapter 11. So if you haven't watched that chapter, that'll give you a little bit more context for this chapter as well. So take some time on that one. Now, in chapter 12, as we continue this conversation, this is again part of the extra insight Jeremiah gives us into what it's like to be a prophet. Most of the time we hear the prophets document, here's what I went and did, here's the message I was told to tell, here's how the people responded, but not so much what am I thinking? What are my thoughts and opinions as a prophet? Jeremiah gives that to us in his book, which is awesome. So let's look at verse 1. Righteous art thou, O Lord, when I plead with thee, yet let me talk with thee of thy judgments. Wherefore doth the way of the wicked prosper? Wherefore are all they happy that deal very treacherously? So this is Jeremiah, and it's written in Old English, but it actually comes from ancient Hebrew or Old Hebrew. So it kind of sounds strange, but what verse 1 is really saying is Jeremiah is saying, God, help me understand this from your perspective. Help me understand what are you doing, basically. Because these people, they tried to kill me, but it almost seems like they get away with it. It seems like their plots work. Wickedness prospers. Why is this? Why can't they be instantly punished? Why can't this turn the other way, basically? Why are they allowed to do wicked? In verse 2, he even continues on here and says, Thou hast planted them, yea, they have taken root. They grow, yea, they bring forth fruit. Thou art near in their mouth and far from their reign. So another analogy of they speak religion, but they're not really. Reigns is like your intestines, basically. They're not inside of them. They don't truly believe you. They just act like they do, basically. So what's the deal with this? Kyle and Delitzsch in their Bible commentary book said, the enmity experienced by Jeremiah at the hands of his countrymen at Anathoth excites his displeasure at the prosperity of the wicked who thrive and live with immunity. He therefore begins to expostulate with God and demands from God's righteousness that they be cut off out of the land. Whereupon the Lord reproves him for this outburst of ill nature and impatience by telling him that he must patiently endure still worse. This section, the connection of which with the preceding is unmistakable, shows by a concrete instance the utter corruptness of the people, and it has been included in the prophecies because it sets before us the greatness of God's long-suffering towards a people ripe for destruction. So that's kind of a good way to think about why do we have this story in the book of Jeremiah. This really helps us not only see the depravity of the people in Judah, that they would go to such great lengths, and it was allowed. Like there's nobody Jeremiah can't go, hey, I've got evidence that these people plotted against me. There's no magistrate that will put them in jail. There's no law that's going to stop them from taking him out because he's not liked. He's not on the right political party. He's got the opinion that no one wants to hear. And so there's no justice will ever happen. And so he's pleading with God, why can't you help deal with this? Why do I have to suffer? Even my own kin, my family, wants to kill me. That's got to be a hard revelation to understand. But that's what's going on here. Now, Thompson made a comment. He said, indeed, it is possible to argue that these words in Jeremiah are variations of the words in Psalms 1, 3, and 4. So this is interesting because the verse 1, wherefore doth the wicked prosper, these are similar to Psalms, the book of Psalms. So maybe Jeremiah was thinking about those as he was coming, oh yeah, I can see this connection in my mind of this experience and what the psalmist experienced, which was most likely King David. In Psalms, the Psalms suggested that good people are strengthened and prospered by God, while evil people have no stability and soon perish. That was not Jeremiah's experience, nor Job's. Rather did the wicked whom God planted take firm root and bear fruit. And yet, although God's name was in the mouth of wicked men, he was far from their heart. So when he says that they were planted and they grew and took fruit, these people are thriving. They're the wealthy. They're the powerful. They're the influential people. They speak as if they believe in God, but inside they don't believe in God. They just make it sound good. This is what's going on, basically. And the laws are designed to allow them to stay in power. They've rigged the system to keep them in power and to at the expense of everybody else, basically. So crazy times, but not that much different from our times too, honestly. Verse 3, but thou, O Lord, knowest me. Thou hast seen me, and tried mine heart toward thee. Pull them out like sheep for the slaughter, and prepare them for the day of slaughter. Now Jeremiah recorded here that the Lord had revealed to him a plot against his life hatched by the men of Anathoth in his hometown. In this connection, Jeremiah noted the instigators of the plot went so far to, I think actually this is the same. So let me see. Yes, this is the same quote I did on the last chapter, so I'm not going to read it again. But just realize that that this is what's going on. Jeremiah's, this is kind of a bad day for Jeremiah, realizing that these people try to kill me and they're going to get away with it. That's infuriating. That'd be upsetting. But that's kind of what's happening. So verse 4, he kind of goes on to this lamenting basically about this. He says in verse 4, how long shall the land mourn and the herbs of every field wither? For the wickedness of them that dwell therein. The beasts are consumed and the birds, because they said, he shall not see our last end. So really interesting idea that's happening in here. In what's going on. Let's see. Now this actually comes. So think of verse 4. Okay. The land is mourning. He's seeing this idea of land of mourning. Herbs of the field are withering. Why? Because the wickedness of the people. So nature. This is that idea again of nature responding to the wickedness of the people. Nature gets more tumultuous, gets more wild and crazy, and just big swings because of the wickedness of the people. The more righteous they are, the less that happens. The more nature works with them rather than works against them, it feels like. But this is also humans saying, I'm smarter than God. I can, I know better in my agriculture and things. So humans tend to move into an area and kind of change the nature of stuff and disrupt that circle of life that nature has already built in naturally. And so they take over fields, they build houses, they destroy things, they over farm, they over hunt, they end up ruining the nature around them basically as well. So that's kind of what verse 4 is. So Jeremiah's wondering basically, why does it seem the wicked prosper and have it good and the righteous suffer? That's kind of this whole thread of thought that Jeremiah is getting at. Shouldn't it be the other way around? I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you were instantly rewarded for doing something good and instantly punished for doing something bad? That could be interesting. You commit murder, you just died right there. Your spirit, you're just dead. You steal something, all of a sudden, bam, something happens and you get punished instantly, basically. It would be, in some ways, again, it sounds like that would be nice. But we have to realize that there's a whole other complex perspective and understanding that we have to understand before we can comprehend why it is the way it is. Well, this is kind of taking God's perspective. And that's what we're going to learn here in just a minute. So, verse 15. This is God now replying back to Jeremiah. And he says here in verse 15, he says here, verse 5, if thou hast run with the footmen, and they have wearied thee, then how canst thou contend with horses? Now that's important to look at, okay? If you're out running with the footmen, the foot soldiers, and they've worn you out, what chance do you have of dealing with horses, running with horses? So he's running and horses are chasing him. That's what God's answer was. Hey, look, if you can't tolerate the problems you have now, what are you going to do when the problems are worse? So there's a perspective. Hey, I mean, I understand what's happening is bad, but it's about to get a lot worse. In fact, he goes on, and if in the land of peace wherein thou trustest they wearied thee, then how wilt thou do in the swelling of Jordan? Now, this is really an interesting thought. Okay, now in chapter 23, verse 21, it says, I did not send the prophets, yet they ran. This metaphor of racing could mean Jeremiah trying to keep up with the false prophets. The horse race could be a metaphor of dealing with war from the Babylonians. If Jeremiah thought contending with the prophets and the people seeking his life was hard, wait till Babylon shows up with their army. That could be a great way that we could look at what verse 5 is telling us, basically. Now, Adam Clarke, this is what he wrote. He said, if the smallest evils to which thou art exposed cause thee to make so many bitter complaints, how wilt thou feel when in the course of thy prophetic ministry thou shalt be exposed to much greater from enemies much more powerful? Footmen may here be the symbol of common evil events, horsemen of evils much more terrible. If thou have sunk under smaller difficulties, what wilt thou do when greater ones come? I believe the meaning is this. If in a country now enjoying peace thou scarcely thinkest thyself in safety, what wilt thou do in the swellings of Jordan, in the time when the enemy like an overflowing torrent shall deluge every part of the land? The overflowing of Jordan, which generally happened in harvest, drove the lions and other beasts of prey from their coverts among the bushes that lined its banks, who spread themselves through the country, made terrible havoc, slaying men and carrying off the cattle. So just when Jordan swells in the springtime for them, this is like in the Nile, they have the inundation period. The wild animals, the lions and the bears, they have to escape because their habitations are being flooded. That causes them to intermingle more with humans and then causes more death and destruction from these animals, basically. He's like, if the small stuff you're dealing with now is you're having a hard time with that, what are you going to do when it gets worse? It's getting worse. God's words to Jeremiah then were a warning to him both to be on his guard and to prepare for more severe trials yet to come. That's probably not the thing you want to hear from God. Oh yeah, you think it's bad now? It's going to get worse. You need to buck up. that's a reality check here. What would you think if God came to you and said that about your life? I'd like to read that in the comments. So this was nothing other than he might have expected from his initial call to fulfill the kind of ministry that was his. Jeremiah's place was to keep faith and courage in his present sufferings, which were negligible in comparison with those that lay ahead. So maybe that's what his job was as the prophet, was to learn how to be ready for hard times. Maybe that's part of what he was there to do. Okay, so verse 6, God is moving on here. He says, for even thy brethren and the house of thy father, even they have dealt treacherously with thee. Yea, they have called a multitude after thee, believe them not, though they speak fair words unto thee. So they're going to try to trick Jeremiah into coming to a place, and then they're going to jump him. It sounds like it's probably going to be, hey, we're going to have a family party. Come with us, Jeremiah, to the family party. And then he gets jumped by the family and the other people, and they're going to kill him and take him out. Basically, I think that's what they tried to do. But Jeremiah ended up getting warned by God that that's what was going to happen. So verse 7, I have forsaken mine house. I have left mine heritage. I have given the dearly beloved of my soul into the hand of her enemies. Now, this is still God speaking here, mind you, okay? But the metaphor is not, we're not talking about Jeremiah's problems. We're talking about Judah's problems now. This is getting back to the marriage covenant, okay? The people are the dearly beloved of God, okay? Like a bride, okay? So the symbol of divorce and separation is, I have forsaken my house. He moved out because he couldn't stay. He wants to come back, but the people need to repent. So that's the challenge, basically. that's happened there. Now, Isaiah 47 is a very similar chapter to what this kind of analogy here, basically. In Isaiah 47, he talks about God giving up his people to a woman who dealt treacherously with them. That's this idea of, I have given the dearly beloved of my soul into the hands of her enemies. So, and this is that idea of the symbol of punishment, judgment upon the people that God tried to warn them through his prophets about and tried to help them with, but they weren't willing to listen to him. And so now justice is going to be dealt with. It's being handed out, basically, which is Babylon that's coming. And now verse 8, mine heritage is unto me as a lion in the forest. It crieth out against me, therefore have I hated it. There's strong words in verse 8. So think about verse 8 this way. Israel has been acting like that it is irritated. God disturbed a lion, and the lion didn't like it, so it is ready to attack God. Such reactions against a master means the animal must be destroyed. So think about this idea, because in verse 8, he's equating Israel as a lion. In verse 7, it was Israel is my bride who doesn't want me anymore, but I'm trying to save the relationship, and she doesn't want to save it. Verse 8 is now Israel is like a lion, basically, who's out in the forest, and I'm trying to poke at the lion. God's trying to work with the lion. Come on, come on. This is like having a tame lion who's no longer wanting to be tame. What happens when the lion turns on the owner? Lion has to be put down. It's got to be destroyed. That's this analogy of Judah has gone bad. God has tried, and Judah has actively, willingly said, no, we're not following you. Basically, and that's what's happened. So verse 9, mine heritage is unto me as a speckled bird. The birds round about are against her. Come ye, assemble all the beasts of the field, come to devour. Now this speckled bird is an interesting thing. It stands out different, shiny bird, or something different from the rest of the birds, basically. Thompson explained it this way. He says, Israel in her proud plumage has attracted the attention of birds of prey, those are the enemies, who move in to attack her. An alternative translation arises from rendering sabua as a noun, hyena, which is possible. This understanding of the word is combined with the Septuagint substitution of the word cave for bird of prey, leads to the translation, is this land of mine a hyena's lair, with birds of prey hovering all around it? So that could be another way to translate the Hebrew into this, is this isn't talking about one bird hated by all the other birds, and then all the beasts of the field coming to devour that. They've attacked the bird's now down, and they get the beasts of the field to come eat the bird. We could see this as the people are like buzzards circling over the hyena's den, waiting for the hyena to leave the dead animal alone and come down and take their piece off of it as well. The picture that results is of a hyena's lair, vultures hovering around, waiting to swoop down what is left of a carcass after the hyena has eaten. In either case, the people and land under attack from foes. There is a feast prepared for all the wild beasts. The destruction of Judah will provide pickings for all. That's how bad it's going to get. The wild beasts will have plenty to eat because there'll be dead bodies everywhere, basically, when the destruction happens. Now, verse 10, many pastors have destroyed my vineyard. We've talked about this earlier as well, about the pastors out for themselves, not out to help the people. They have trodden my portion underfoot. They have made my pleasant portion a desolate wilderness. They're not teaching the truth. They're teaching what's popular. They're teaching what allows them to be more amazing as pastors. They're teaching to teach, not teaching to help the people. And because of that, they've ruined the teachings of the truth, stomped the truth down, and made it hard for the people to follow the truth because of the faults. Verse 11, they have made it desolate, and being desolate, it mourneth unto me. Now, this is interesting because it is the subject. This is talking about value, land. They have made the land desolate, and being desolate, the land mourneth to me. So this is like Mother Nature mourning to God. Why can't you deal with the crap that these people are doing to me, basically? The whole land is made desolate because no man layeth it to heart. Now, here's the thing that's interesting. They have taken the value of the land to themselves. They're exploiting the land. How can I bulldoze the land down and build something that makes me a lot of money? How can I use what's in front of me, chop it all down, cut it up, and ship it off and sell it? That's the problem here. The land has been converted into money for the people. That's the value. They're taking the value of nature and making money off of it, basically. So you can also look at this and see that they're not trying to be religious to be religious. They're using religion. If you think of verse 10 and 11 together, they're using religion to make money. They're not using religion to help the people, basically. It's all about money, making money for themselves. Continuing on with this, verse 12, the spoilers are come upon all high places through the wilderness. For the sword of the Lord shall devour from one end of the land even to the other end of the land. No flesh shall have peace. That's a lot of destruction. That's a lot of challenges that are going to happen. So foreign and pagan nations would become tools in Yahweh's hand to fulfill his purposes of judgment. That's the way to think about verse 12. Now, the high places is where you put the altars, you worship, the temple, those kinds of things. They are come upon the high places through the wilderness. So these are other nations coming in through the wilderness, not coming through down the roads, but coming out of the trees, basically. The sword of the Lord shall devour from one end of the land even to the other end. Again, no flesh shall have peace. Complete and utter destruction is what is in store for Israel, or Judah, basically. Verse 13, they have sown wheat, but shall reap thorns. They have put themselves to pain, but shall not profit. And they shall be ashamed of your revenues because of the fierce anger of the Lord. Now, here's the thing to think about with this. This is people sowing wheat. You're planting wheat seeds. Okay, you're spreading the wheat seeds out so that eventually in the future you can harvest the wheat and be able to eat it and make bread and do things to help sustain your life. But they're not going to get that. They're going to reap thorns. What does that mean? Weeds. They're not going to be able to complete the harvest. And they've worked hard on this, but it's not going to be profitable because it's all going to go bad. They're not going to have time to, by the time they get around to getting out to the fields, after the destruction, after the wars and the famine and the contention, because they're going to have a siege and they're going to go into the city of Jerusalem and stay there. So the fields are going to be left on their own for months. When they get back out there, anybody that survives is going to find the weeds have overrun the wheat. They won't be able to harvest the wheat because of the utter destruction, how long that's going to take. So planting the seeds, sowing the seeds, is going to be a waste of their time because they're not going to get the harvest. But they don't know that yet because they're not listening to Jeremiah. If they did listen to Jeremiah, they would have known that. All right, so let's go on with verse 14. Thus saith the Lord against all mine evil neighbors that touch the inheritance which I have caused my people Israel to inherit. This is a warning to the people around Judah. Okay, Judah had a lot of enemies that could not wait to take their peace out of Judah when Judah fell. We see this a little bit more later on when the actual destruction happens. We'll hear a little bit about this. Other smaller nations basically will do these little invading raids in because the Jerusalem wall will be destroyed to basically steal out of Jerusalem and take what they can. So here's a warning to all of these people. Behold, I will pluck them out of their land and pluck out the house of Judah from among them. Very important to look at. So the spoilers of the Lord's heritage are also to be carried off out of their land. But after they, like Judah, have been punished, the Lord will have pity on them and will bring them back one and all into their own land. And if the heathen who now seduce the people of God to idolatry learn the ways of God's people and convert to the Lord, they shall receive citizenship amongst God's people and be built up amongst them. This is great. We're going to see this. This is kind of giving us a heads up of what's coming in this chapter as well. We're seeing destruction, but there's a promise of peace coming, of opportunity. Thus will the Lord manifest himself before the whole earth as righteous judge, and through judgment secure the weal or health and prosperity, not only of Israel, but of the heathen peoples too. By this discovery of his world plan, the Lord makes so complete a reply to the prophet's murmuring concerning the prosperity of the ungodly, that from it may clearly be seen the justice of God's government on earth. That was Kyle Delitzsch's Bible commentary. So this is really interesting. We're going to see, because again, God just said in verse 14, anybody that invades Jerusalem, you'll be destroyed. And that does include Babylon. So verse 15, he says, and it shall come to pass that after I have plucked them out, I will return and have compassion on them. And will bring them again, every man to his heritage and every man to his land. Now this isn't just Judah. This is the heathen nations too. He will restore everything back when it is time. That is the last days, basically. That's our day and age, and our future is what we're looking at. Verse 16, and it shall come to pass, if they will diligently learn the ways of my people, to swear by my name, the Lord liveth. As they taught my people to swear by Baal, then shall they be built in the midst of my people. So what this is saying, no, verse 17, let me finish. If they will not obey, I will utterly pluck up and destroy that nation, saith the Lord. So I like this because if the neighbors or the non-Israelites keep the commandments of God just like the Israelites do, they will be accepted and allowed, just as if they are my people. That's that law of adoption. So you don't have to be a blood relative of Abraham to be in the chosen people of God. God is very inclusive in strangers and other people coming in and being a part of his kingdom. He says they have to follow his commandments, though. So I want to be careful of this, because in today's world, we have this analogy of inclusion, that we should include people and allow them to bring their thoughts and ideas with them, and we'll take our thoughts and their thoughts and we'll integrate it together. And that is not what God is saying in here. What God is saying in here is, here's my law. If you are going to change your thoughts and follow my law, you're allowed in. If you're not allowed in. You will be destroyed. The governing principle here is obedience to the commandments of God, following truth. That's what it's about. That's the key. So when we follow truth, when we truly strive to follow God, not just appear like we're following God or do what somebody else told us to do about following God, when we truly, sincerely strive to follow God and are willing to let go of our own beliefs so that we can find more of his truth, that is when the magic happens and things will move to help us come to God. But it's our agency and choice that makes that happen. And that's vitally important. So whether you're born in the covenant, whether you're not, genealogy is great, but everybody has a chance of coming back. Everybody does. You think about it, we're all descendants of Adam and Eve. We're all family at some point. If we go back far enough, we all come together. But God has a plan for us all and wants to help us. And I love, even though we find a whole lot of this talk of destruction and death and problems about the judgments of the people, there's always a sign of mercy, of hope. And that is a great God to worship. God that has love and hope for us. That's what this is about. Thanks for watching. Let's jump over to the next chapters. We continue to learn from the book of Jeremiah.